Hello everyone and welcome to this video on Spring Boot controllers. So far we have seen the get mapping annotation which is used for writing the get endpoints which are used to fetch information. Next we are going to look at a post endpoint which is going to create a resource. So when I say a resource in our current context, it will be orders, right? So we will create an endpoint that will help us create orders in the system, right? So you can only fetch orders if you have some orders in the system. So far we were working on hard-coded values of orders, right? So we'll try to move away from these hard-coded orders and see how we can create orders in the system and then use the get APIs to fetch those orders, right? So with that, I will introduce the next annotation, which is the post mapping annotation, right? And as the name suggests, this is basically for posting data or creating a new resource in the database, right? So we will follow the same convention as we've been following. It will be v1 slash orders, same as the get all orders endpoint. It's just that this was a get API and this is a post API, right? So I'll just declare the function call as well. So in this case, when we are creating an order, we might just want to return the order ID, right? Remember, now we will have to create an order ID for every order, right? So we will just create an order, uh, basically in the sense that we will create an order ID, we'll generate a unique order ID, assign it to the request object, and then store it in the database, right? So let's get started with that. So I'll call this function name as create order. The word order here might feel redundant. Get all seems it's self-explanatory that this is an order controller. So even get all as a function name would have been good enough, or I could have said just get, and that would also have been good enough. But just for the sake of convention that we have started, let's call it create order here, right? And in order to accept the attributes in a request, right? Request body specifically, what we do is we annotate something called, we use an annotation called request body here, right? And the request body is of the type order, right? We already have an order class, so Spring Boot will try to map the request body to this order object, right? I'll just give it a name, the variable a name, right? Basically, so this is as simple as that. This is the function that we will use to create orders, right? And like I said earlier, we will create an order ID. So we need to create a unique order ID for every incoming order. So I can use a UUID to generate uh, a unique order ID for us, let's say, right? And what I'll do is, for simplicity, I will just assign this order ID to the incoming order, right? And now having done that, we'll need to return this order ID, of course, that we've generated back to the consumer. But we will also try to save this order to the list of orders. Right now, remember, this might be an immutable list of orders, so we will have to move away from this hard-coded list. Instead, let's have a new array list here, right? And this will allow me to add this newly created orders to this list, newly created order to this list, right? So this is all we had to do, right? We've received an order as part of the request body, right? We generated an order ID and we have set that order ID in the order, and we've just added that order to the list of all the existing orders that we had, right? And we returned back the order ID. So this is all we have to do as part of this exercise. Let's quickly check if this order starts reflecting in the get endpoint. So I'll just restart the service, right? The service is restarted. And at this point, I'd like to introduce a tool called Postman. So this is basically a client which is used for testing your endpoints, right? So when you write an API endpoint, the get endpoint, as you saw, can be tested even from the browser, right? We've been testing on the Chrome browser so far. But when you have to post data, right, you have request body that needs to go. In that case, you need a explicit tool, something like this, which will allow you to, create a JSON body. It will also have a place where you can key in the URI, right? And you can specify this function, whether it's a get or a post or a put. So all these HTTP functions that you can use are specified here. Right, so as you can see, this is the v1/orders URL, and I'm just passing the status as pending. Right, we don't have any other fields. We just have order ID and status. So order ID will be generated by the service. So I'm just passing the status over here, right? And I'll hit the API. And as you can see, this is the response that I got from the uh, API, right? The create API has returned this UUID. This is the order ID that was generated. Right? So if I want to just take a look at all the orders that exist in the system, this is the previous request, right? I'll probably even remove, oh, okay, so I can't remove status pending because I think the request is still mandatory, status is still mandatory. So I'll just run this same query API call. And as you can see, this UUID is same as what was created in the previous call. This is ending with C2B6. If you come here, you'll see the same UUID generated. So this means that our get endpoint is able to fetch the orders which were created as part of the create endpoint.